Hello, I'm here today with Sandra Glickman, who is a longtime practitioner and leader in Trillium Awakening, having begun teaching in 1996 when the organization was known as Waking Down. Sandra helped develop many of the workshops, practices, and principles we use today in this work. She, for many years, practiced as a licensed psychotherapist, using the skills of attuning two students with an interest in helping them find underlying patterns and mindsets to bring them further into self-awareness and wholeness. She contributes to the work of Trillium through serving teacher preparation and education and various arenas in the organization. Along with others, she is serving as a guiding force in the ongoing development of this work. Sandra lives and teaches Trillium Awakening in Fairfield, Iowa. Sandra, welcome.
Thank you, Cielle. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you here. And you're going to, again, today, as part of this ongoing series, you're going to talk to us a little bit about what is the edge for you in terms of consciousness exploration. So why don't you give us a context for what you're going to be leading us through today?
Okay, good. Thanks. Well, I'm going to reach back a ways because the work that I'm currently doing is very focused around discrimination and raising our identification as consciousness. And we discovered a long time ago that this takes some discipline, some focus, some work to increase your awareness of consciousness. And I just say this in contrast to the Waking Down work originally invited people to let go of their training in consciousness disciplines, a lot of meditation, a lot of practices, in order to reclaim the body's awareness and the body's experience and the emotions and the experience of living a human life and not only striving for an excellent life in consciousness. So we started out challenging what we call the hyper-masculine. And that was like extensive focus on awakening and seeking and perfecting and purifying, because that was the mood in the beginning. And so that was served us really, really well to let go of that intensity and just descend into the body's life and the emotions life. And that was a really reclaiming of the feminine. And it has been really serving us very, very well. And it was possible then to awaken more quickly in the midst of your life as an ordinary human being. So now that we've gone on almost 20 years here, we're discovering that there is a new call to refine and augment our awareness as consciousness itself in order to take us further into our work in the world, our embrace of our total being. So this work that I'm suggesting is a kind of a return to, I would call it a soft discipline, not a hard one, but it's a discipline of sorts. So that's the cycle I'm wanting to comment on now, bringing us back into the acknowledgement of the need for some discipline to further our growth. So I particularly wanted to talk about applying this new level of attention and discipline to what has been called by the greater spiritual community the we space. Like originally one went to an ashram, sat on your cushion and maybe interacted with a teacher, but you basically worked within your own body mind. In I am meditating, I am expanding my awareness, I am purifying. And now the focus has come more into the collective, like we can do this together, and it has a more powerful effect than doing it only alone. So in the we space, which now I'm calling just Trillium Awakening relational spaces, I'm suggesting we can bring a little practice to make these relational spaces more potent. And all along, at Trillium Awakening has been characterized by relationship. Really, relationship and mutuality has been a unique characteristic of our work. So now we're coming into these relational spaces and bringing like a measure of discipline which will make them function more potently. That's what I want to talk about. So, but first I have to say, because I don't know, I like to name the whole flow. You know, all human beings have been living in relational spaces, of course, beginning with family, beginning with schooling and friends, beginning with various work organizations, and beginning with, you know, our culture, our world, you know, just abiding in the world. We abide with other people in relational spaces. But a couple of things happen. In the relational spaces we've been living in, our minds have become patterned and structured by what went on there. We have parents who represented our authority figures, sometimes even our God figures. We have siblings who represented our, I don't know what you would call them, our worthy opponents trying to get goods in the family. And then, you know, we went through a whole lot of different spaces to be educated and to be trained and to take our place in the human race. So these spaces have been hierarchical all along, and they have been imprinting us. And we know that we've been consciously imprinted. Parent-child, you know, sibling, teacher, student, and so forth. But what we aren't aware of, and what does get in the way of our capacity to embrace more of who we are, to uncover our shadow patterns, is the unconscious structuring, unconscious. In other words, much of what we learned and what we were taught and our way of becoming has kind of like slipped into the patterns, and they now seem like the ordinary water that our fish self swims in, so we don't recognize how we've been structured. Now, when you come into a Trillium group space, and this goes with just you working with a teacher, you working with peers, you working in a small weekend group setting, or a larger group, you actually are, you know, accessing a lot of the patterns that may be unconscious to you, or maybe barely conscious to you, or maybe irritating or pleasant to you, but you know, you sort of just, they're there, you don't know what to do with them. So these groups where you can come into a group and practice more consciously will help you open up to places where you might be stuck, where you might have glitches that you don't even know about, where you might be just in a pattern of reacting, and you want to go beyond that pattern. So being in a group will flush out these patterns and help to make you more conscious. And once you just see a pattern and you become conscious of it and you embrace it or own it or speak to others about it, then the pattern has a chance to integrate more consciously and to begin to move out of your way, so that your way forward to greater growth and greater embrace of all that you are gets a chance to come alive again in a new way. So that's what we're talking about here. Coming into these groups, relational groups, and participating and considering, patterns that may be out of sight to you. How you relate to authority is really a big one that comes up for everybody. What roles you might tend to take in a group, and how you might be reacting to leadership or other people, or people that are like you or people that are not like you, people that inspire you, people that bore you, whatever. But you're coming into more knowledge, more self-knowledge. And then you're practicing how to own this and how to go beyond it by new levels of expression. So that's the bigger background I'm talking about here.
No, thank you so much. I think it's going to be really valuable for people who are listening to this to really have that either refreshed or maybe even for the first time, larger context of why it is we get together in this work into this, I love this, relational spaces. It's not only for the fact that we create relational spaces, but for what it reveals to each of us as individuals within a relational space, to bring that into consciousness so that it can be integrated, and the freedom that's a result when that integration happens, as opposed to things just lying in shadow. Now, Sandra, I also have heard that you have more recently been looking at breath as a practice, because you also talked a little bit about practices when they're not hypermasculine, when they're just useful structure, can bring us forth in life in positive ways. So what is it about breath that you wanted to bring up today?
Yeah, thanks, Cielle. Well, many years, of course, I did meditate, and part of the meditation practice was to follow the breath. And I did that, and yet I've recently been reading some instruction that encourages you not just to follow the breath, because actually that was very native to me, like I could sit down and kind of groove on all the fine, ideas that came to me, and all the perceptions, and my awareness would go to this one, to this one, to this one, to this one, to this one. And it was entertaining. I liked it. And it was, it was good, but it was really in alignment with who I already was. Easy to lose focus, easy to flow, and easy to embrace a lot of variety. Okay, well, this is a little bit different for me. I realized that this instruction, which was to cultivate the breath by focusing on the breath as an object of one's attention. So this begins to bring in more of what we call the true masculine, the capacity of the masculine force to bring focus, to bring intention to the forefront, rather than wandering here and there, to bring one to kind of like draw in one's wandering attention and put it toward a goal or a vision or a project that you want to empower. Well, I'm female. I go easily with wandering, but it's more difficult, like, to do this practice of focusing. And so to my own being, I'm adding in what I feel is a necessary masculine empowerment. Mm-hmm. And it's had wonderful effect for me. And here's how it works, or here's what I discovered. It wasn't really written there, but this is what I discovered, that the breath itself is really the sign of embodiment. It pulls me into immediacy and presence. Whereas, the other form of awareness and focus, the more global form, it relaxes me, lets me wander about, and before long I'm daydreaming or drifting or spinning out. You know what I mean? I'm not really present in the same way. I'm diffuse. Mm-hmm. And so I personally wanted to learn how to become more present. And I discovered the breath is really the key, a bridge between the body and its presence in phenomena and any level that appeared to the body. Like, the breath relates you instantly to life in the gross, the physical body. And if you want to move up to a more refined, subtle awareness, the breath, changing the breath and opening the breath can take you to that awareness. So it's kind of like the breath is kind of a magical attunement to the entire cosmos. It's like the cosmos pulls in, the cosmos opens up, the breath comes in, the breath opens up, and all the time it's anchoring you there in the present moment of that flow between narrow, wide, So direct, diffuse, but the breath is what keys you into all that. And a lot of people in our work spent some time doing the presence process. I can't remember the author, maybe you know.
Michael Brown, I think.
Yeah, Michael Brown, the presence process. And he directed people to utilize a period of breathing, like maybe 15 minutes, in which you focused on the breath. So it's a well-known way to become more present. But this way I started doing it, and I discovered it could be worked into our group process. And we have always in Trillium talked about the paradox. There's this pole and this pole. They seem very different, but they actually are very related. And kind of like the integration of this pole and this pole is somehow magical, where you discover that the two poles come together and then they it's hard to pull them apart. They have a certain flavor of unity, and yet they can appear different this way and this way. So in the Trillium relational spaces, there's a need to focus on myself, my personal, unique, present self, and what's going on inside me and as my individuality. And then we're sitting in a group of people, and we also need to listen and extend our awareness to the other out there and try to empathize and move into their perspective so that we can support them and be impacted by them. And so we're called to do this paradoxical thing of being myself and being the other. And that's how the group grows. That's how the power of the group is acknowledged. And your own participation enhances the complexity of the group and adds more perspectives. And you're listening and inviting other people and being impacted by them also does that. It adds complexity and wholeness, more and more wholeness. So I wanted to talk about how that works today.
Yeah. So is there's actually is there actual literal instruction that you can give people about breath and relational space?
Yes.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So the first thing that I would ask people to try and learn about is the focus, using one's attention to focus on the in-breath and the out-breath as it moves through your nostrils, as it literally, cools and opens and flows through your nostrils, because that's a very physical practice and it's easy to get a hold of, and it actually narrows your attention so that you can look and study and enter into this specific thing. And let's see. So I think I'm going to suggest right now that we try this. How about that?
Okay, that sounds great. I'll be your person you can try it on, right?
Okay. So finding, first of all, you must acknowledge your whole being and where you're sitting, the room you're in, and just get oriented that way, and then just gently, without trying to do anything in particular, notice overall your breathing. And so just do that for a moment, okay? Notice your breathing in and out. And notice that as you breathe in and out, a lot of things may be coming to your consciousness. We're multi-dimensional people, so we have awarenesses in many dimensions. The physical dimension, the room we're in, the sounds we hear, the sensations in our body, the thoughts that pop up in our mind, the images, pictures, memories, many, many things, as you're just simply breathing, can appear to your awareness. So now, take your awareness into the breath as it enters and exits. It'll take a few seconds through your nostrils. This may sound kind of weird, but there's a lot to be discovered. It's like it's looking deeply into a stream, a part of a stream that's rippling by. It's always rippling by, but it has different characteristics, different sounds, different appearances, even as you're looking at one little part of a stream. So you're focusing on the stream of your breathing. And you may notice that it has different characteristics and that it triggers different places in your body. But even though it may be opening up your lungs and opening your ribs, and even though it may be taking you down to the base of your body or up to your brain, just continue to focus on the breath as it goes in and out of your nostrils as a point of focus. I'm going to leave you alone to do this for a couple of minutes here, maybe a minute here. Okay, now I know you'll hear my voice, but I want you to let my voice be more in the background as you continue to put your attention on your breath as it moves in and out of your nose. And I'll ask you some questions. What are you noticing? Is it easy for you to keep that focus on your breath? Or does it require some effort? And what do you do when you lose the focus on your breath, when your attention goes drifting away into plans for lunch or what happened yesterday? What do you do? Just be easy. It's very simple. Just pull your attention when you become aware that it's gone away. Pull your attention gently back to your breath. Now, why do you do that? Well, it's not because your breath is any way better than any other place to put your attention, but it begins to train your mind to settle down, to calm down, to quit following every stimulus away from your present focus, to build a power of focus, of a power of concentration, if you will. And concentration is very, very valuable. You know, it's what can keep you, I don't know, if you're doing a physical practice and you're lifting weights and they're heavy and there's danger, concentration can keep you safe. Concentration is very important in learning and manifesting anything. So as your mind pulls you to a different focus of attention, gently encourage it to come back to your breath in the nose as it flows in and out of the nostrils. This is not immediately rewarding or fascinating, but the point is to be able to direct your attention with more power and more purpose. So a little bit longer, do that. So maybe you can just to yourself kind of make a summary of whether you were able to do this very easily or whether it was difficult. And maybe whether different emotions came up with you as you were doing this. Like, there are definitely parts of ourselves that don't want to be disciplined. They don't want to come under that authority. It's kind of an authority problem. Oh, I just don't want to do it, you know? Maybe if you have one of these parts, you could ask yourself, huh, who is this person that doesn't want to do this experiment of focusing my attention more steadily on my breath? Who is this person? How old is she or he? And what reasons am I giving for not wanting to focus? Of course, you may not be convinced of this yet, so I want you to look at this as an experiment that you could work with. You could either confirm or disconfirm it for yourself. I'm not telling you you have to do it. Okay. So it is possible over time with real practice where the brain becomes more trained that you can pull in your focus and really become powerful at directing your attention towards something you really wish to accomplish. I think this is what is actually functioning in people who can play cards really well. Remember all the cards that were put on the table, and that's sort of a talent. It really has to do with the capacity to focus attention and accomplish your intentions. And it requires discipline. That's just an example. But, so what happens is we often drift into other states of being. They could be even called kind of a living dream or a fantasy, where you let yourself feel or entertain a situation that's not present for you. And there's value to that. I'm not saying there's not, but very often we don't realize that we've drifted away from the present moment and we've lost consciousness of what's actually going on in our person, in our field, in our relationships. We're somewhere else. We've gone away. So you could say that to call yourself back is a small moment of awakening to your present condition. So you call yourself back and you awaken from the dream that you drifted off into. And that has value. Okay, so congratulations if you were able to stick with that. And I hope to inspire you to try it again. Now, here's the other kind of attention, which we all probably are pretty good at it. And this is to cultivate what you could call panoramic attention. Panoramic. Letting yourself go here and here and here and here as phenomena appear to your awareness. You go there, you be with that. You go over here, you be with that. That is diffuse attention or panoramic attention. It has its value because, I don't know, it just does. It's more associated with a feminine perspective and the sense of wholeness. Like, this entire field is now, I've now acknowledged this entire field of this room, of my mind, of my feelings, of my relationship. And it's kind of like a whole view, So it's very valuable. So let's try that. as a contrast. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So settle down. Cielle, you are a very settled person, but settle down your body. Feel yourself on the chair and notice yourself in the container of the room you're in. And notice the general condition of your body being, whether you're more calm or more anxious or, alert and aware and ready to move, or whether you're preoccupied. Just noticing the general condition and noticing the general state of your breathing. This is just preliminary to getting oriented. Okay, now you're oriented in time and space. And now allow yourself to open up. Just relax and open up and be present to any bit of phenomena as it arises in your awareness. I kind of think this is what we mostly do, that, we're really good at calming the body and opening the feelings and the sensations and the mind. So that's what you're doing now. Opening the feelings, the sensation, and the mind. You may open yourself to just this room, maybe to the inside of your body, maybe the outside. You may open yourself to your city, to your entire earth, or to the entire cosmos. This is possible as you sit relaxed in one place to open to all these places and changing from here to there. A sound, maybe a bird outside, opens your hearing. Maybe the sense of someone in another room opens you to the awareness of other people around. Maybe just humming of machinery in our lives becomes obvious to you. So I'm going to be quiet for a moment and ask you to be aware in your panoramic field. Okay, let's now try something else. Let my voice bring you back to a more focused concentration. Pulling in from the wide panoramic field that you've been in. Notice how you feel about pulling in, whether that's acceptable and easy enough for you to do, or whether you would rather have more time to linger there in that open field of awareness, or something in between. So, I am making the point to you that both these forms of awareness are invaluable. But now, in tradition of Trillium awakening and in tradition of unifying the paradoxes and joining the opposites, integrating, in other words, I'm going to ask you to do alternating focus. So alternating between these two types of conscious awareness. So first, try this out. Narrow focus, concentrated focus on the breath coming in and out of your nostrils. So we're going to do that first, and then I'll ask you later to open up to the greater field of panoramic awareness, but come first to the focused awareness. So do that first, and then I'll call you to do the other. Good. Now I just will make a comment. It doesn't matter whether your eyes are open or closed. I mean, we often meditate with our eyes closed, but there are traditions that meditate with their eyes open. Now, as you know, if you're going to be in a group, in a Trillium Awakening relational group, relational space, you're going to generally have your eyes open. And it's totally possible to focus concentrated awareness on your breath with your eyes open but soft, we say. Soft eyes. In other words, like just maybe 1/4 close your eyes a bit so that your attention will tend to go more inward. But you will have your eyes open and you'll be prepared, to go to the more panoramic awareness. Either way, you can have your eyes open or closed, but practicing with eyes open is kind of good. Okay, so now take yourself to the panoramic awareness. Open your eyes, allow anything to come in, body sensations, noises, thought forms, pictures, memories, just allowing whatever is there to arise and giving it your attention. So I'll let you do that for a moment. I'll encourage you to do that for a moment. Okay, now instruct yourself to rein in and come back to the concentrated focus on your in-breath, on your breath through the nostrils. Flow of breath through the nostrils. Okay, this requires flexibility. Now open your awareness to the panoramic field. Let's do it one more time just to get the feeling of moving back and forth. Coming back again into the more narrow, concentrated focus of the flow of your breath through your nostrils. Now, this time, I'm going to invite you to agree with yourself to do both. Okay, you're going to have a degree of concentrated focus on the breath as it goes in and out of your nose. I don't know, maybe 30%, maybe 50%. But you're also going to take note of anything that arises in your panoramic vision, your field vision. So you're consciously doing both. So now I'll just ask you to take note of that experience of doing both. Notice if anything was different, or if it was the same, or if anything became more magnified or less important or more important. I mean, just take note of how that was different from how you ordinarily sit and listen to a video or watch a video. So I wish I could ask you to give your questions, but I'll ask Cielle as your proxy if there's any comment or questions you want to make.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. That was quite a beautiful exercise. I very much enjoyed the progression, just to have that focus, just as simple as the breath. I mean, it's such an easy focus to have because it's always with us. You don't have to go light a candle and focus on a candle flame. It's just there in the moment. And so I did appreciate the kind of a gentle focusing of awareness. And like you said, that it could be a discipline, but not a hyper masculine discipline, because it's not a discipline that is trying to fix or um, bypass life itself, because you're just with life itself. Just you're very much with your own breath. So it felt, I liked that word discipline. It was an engagement in the present moment
Mhm.
with something. And yet at the same time, I was even noticing in the very first exercise, where the attention was only with the breath, that already there was still some, it felt a natural thing that not every little tiny bit of my attention was on the breath. There was still some awareness of what you then later called the panorama. But I did also experience in this series of exercises that yes, I could be in more intent on one or the other, or to hold both simultaneously. And I found for myself that it was a little more, I could say the word challenging, or it took a little more discipline. In other words, with my eyes open,
Ah,
because then there was kind of more of a flood of the panorama
ah.
to attract my attention. But it became actually, like I said, a more disciplined to, could I both notice the panorama? I could notice where I might start to get merged with something outside of myself. So there was more happening. And yet it was very with having your kind of gentle guidance to just make those invitations to bring the attention one place or another was, really quite helpful. And fortunately, I didn't feel any rebellious parts coming forth to say no. It was just like, it was relaxing. So I'm just going to relax and let your voice make suggestions. And that helped. I mean, it helped so much that I think that this for myself, and I hope for other people that are listening, would actually want to come back to this exercise again with your voice, because it just makes it easy to not have to have another part of it saying to switch or something like that. Maybe as we develop this particular, I love this word that's being thrown around a lot, neuroplasticity, a new way of using the brain. The brain continues to be flexible throughout our life, and it responds to training. So I feel like this is a kind of subtle training in being a human, just, I don't know what else to call it. It's just, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cielle. I love your words and your reflections. I totally get what you're talking about. And I wanted to take it one step further and help people recreate or get a sense of what it's like in a Trillium Awakening relational space as you move in and out of this practice.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have really discovered that relational spaces go much better when there's agreement about how the space is structured and what its purpose is and what we can hope to gain from entering into these spaces. And of course, we name these spaces mutuality. It's a word we're all accustomed to. But, we have discovered over time that we need to become way more skillful at mutuality, because it's easy to lose it. It's easy to slip into old patterns with other people. As I mentioned, we've all been conditioned by relational spaces of the past. It's easy to slip into that. But if you really are sitting in these groups and you're being aware of the potential for focusing on your breath, which will bring you present to your own experience, to your internal experience, a little bit more than the group experience. Mm-hmm. So you're in a group, maybe you find yourself getting confused or activated or resistant. Bring your focus in to your breath as it moves in and out of your nostrils. This will orient you to your own experience and calm your body mind. It's a sensate orientation, and it renews your confidence in your own life. I'm alive. Here I am. I'm here. I'm breathing. Nothing dire is happening to me. I am I am focusing on my breath and I am orienting to my personal experience now. So you have always had the option to do that. And as Cielle was talking, you also have the option to just open your eyes and come to the presence, to the whole group. So part of your coming to presence in the whole group is to notice the entire field. And maybe as your turn to speak comes around, you may want to comment on how the entire field appears to you. Oh, I'm really getting the sense that this issue is important to people, or I feel really supported by the way people are speaking of their experience, or I know it seems like there's a lot of tension in this space. That's what I'm feeling. So it's very important to, when your turn comes, to contribute what you're sensing of the common field of the space we're all in. And another thing that you want to be able to do is focusing on your own experience, but being able to extend your awareness very specifically into, empathically, into the perspective of the speaker, so that you are really standing in their shoes momentarily, so you can get what they're talking about, so that you can be penetrated by their experience. And that enhances and augments your own experience of human life. It builds and increases your capacity for empathy and understanding. And if you have that capacity for empathy and understanding, then you're going to be more whole, and you're going to move into a space that helps you clarify what you need to do, what you need to, how you need to direct and govern your own mental patterns. You see, so we have those options. If you're really increasing your consciousness by doing these forms of breathing and presence, then you begin to have more options. I don't know if that's clear, but it has been my experience.
I think it was very clear, Sandra, and I think that it's something that will, you gave this analogy once, and I love it, is that, when a river has banks to it, then the river can flow with purpose. And if there's no banks, we have a swamp, and a swamp has some purpose too, but it's not very directive. And so even just like what you've said right now, of giving us a value of going into these relational Trillium spaces with with banks, so that the river of that space can flow more purposefully. And
thank you.
And it did make sense to me what you were saying, and yet I don't know that it's something that people stop to consider how they could enter the relational space with this very good recognition of what is in their present moment experience, and how their present moment experience also is reflected in and informed by the group space. We talk a lot about the awakened life as being that recognition of the non-separateness that we live in the awakened life. And these kind of suggestions you're giving right now will really enliven a conscious enlivenment of that sense of non-separateness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and along with that sense, of not being alone, being part of a group of humans that share a perspective and that are growing together. The group space takes on more and more, I don't know, I use this word, I don't know if it's right, more and more elan, life, more and more upwelling, more and more joy even, or pleasure, or delight in the exchange. And so as an individual, I get to come into a collective in which I get to flow with that current of the river that's contained in acknowledged boundaries that are important. And so within those boundaries, there's an upwelling, an uplifting, a sense of being my separate self, but also of belonging. And I think that's one of the most powerful values of our relational spaces.
Yeah, thank you for bringing in that word belonging. It's not one that I think we often hear in this Trillium work, but it's actually, when I reflect on it, it's a very beautiful world. We use a lot that expression, are the human need to see and be seen, to be met, to meet and be met. But that word belonging, it so beautifully captures that human need. And this, these kind of suggestions you're making today that will bring that sense of belonging right into our own bodies.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's about all I have to say at this time.
Well, thank you. I just, I wanted also to let the people that are here listening to this, please understand that these are being posted so that you can listen to them more than once. And really, that was a lot of information that Sandra has brought to us today. And some of it is kind of, I would say, on the leading edge of the evolution of our awakened life. And so please listen to them again, do these exercises again. Sandra also has a page on the trilliumawakening.org website. And if you want to learn more about Sandra and her offerings and read many essays that she has posted there, please go ahead. It's easy to find her on that website, trilliumawakening.org. Under the teachers, you'll find a link to Sandra Glickman and her offerings. So any final remarks that you want to share before you go, Sandra?
Well, you've made it very easy, Cielle. Thank you for even envisioning that we could have such a summit. And I just feel very supported by having you present in this little offering. And, we do need and thrive with relationship. That's my main thing. And learning how to be awake and present and discriminating and empathic and to be, full in relationship is a huge learning for life. So that is really one of the fundamentals of Trillium Awakening, relationship.
Well, thank you for joining today, Sandra.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, anyone who's participated in this.
Thank you.